Amazing, Phil. Welcome to the future of fashion business. Thanks for being on.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Likewise, I'm very excited for the conversation. Let's see. Well, you were saying before we actually got things started that you didn't do a lot of podcasts before. So just out of curiosity, I know you said that predominantly was because you were busy, or you didn't just see the opportunity to actually make these things happen. But what made you change that for this particular occasion? Because I know it was probably not my email persuasion skills.
It's funny actually because it's well, yeah, it probably wasn't the content of your or the of your email, but it was more that I think it hit me at a great time because I think I've learned so much the last many years, and we've really taken the company to very, very far, maybe further than many expected, to be honest. And I think now it's also the time that I kind of tell the story and even maybe, give some advice to other people, like how, how to start a brand, how do you actually build a business. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because and I mean I can relate to a certain degree with what you were saying. Not to the same degree, of course, but similarly where you just go through this period where you're so busy making everything at the beginning, making everything work, and then sort of you're so busy making sure that what is already working doesn't stop working, and you're also super busy trying to convince yourself that you're able to do things. And once you get through those periods and you actually sit down and reflect upon, okay, maybe I am qualified to share what I've learned, or maybe I am qualified to put some time aside and share sort of our story of what we've sort of built confidently. And it's sort of like it's more of an emotional process that takes a long time to develop than the actual, just having the time to sit down and do it.
Exactly. And I think there is also when you actually embark on a kind of entrepreneurial adventure, you learn a lot. And I think I also came to the stage where kind of buying back my time is also interesting for me. I'm actually really spending a lot of energy on figuring out, what can I outsource, even if that is internally. But what can I kind of let other people do that I don't necessarily have to do? And I think that exercise also frees more time for me to actually spend more time on value creation. And I do think that value creation is obviously one thing internally in the company, and it's something for me personally, but I actually also feel like I want to create value for other people as well.
Sure.
So that's kind of where I landed now. And that's basically where your email kind of came at a perfect time.
Good timing.
Yeah.
Interesting. And for the guests that are listening that don't know anything about what you do, can you give us a little bit of context on what exactly do you do? Because you have a very, very interesting sort of like overall business model, and you're involved in the fashion industries in a very well integrated way. So I think just for the sake of people understanding the context of the person they'll be learning from, can you just introduce a little bit more about, Tue, exactly the brands that you run and the group that you have and all those different things?
Absolutely. Not to go kind of too far back and make too long of a story, but basically what I like to do is create things. I like to see ideas become a concept become a product, and that product hitting the real world and giving feedback and basically kind of coming out there and ending up working with retention and making customers happy and those kind of things. So basically what I love is to create stuff. And the first, I would say, company that I started was a company that I did about 15 years ago. I started basically a streetwear brand. It got very big, very fast. Already in the third year of the business, we sold more than 500,000 t-shirts and sweatshirts per year. So it was very, very big, very fast. Already in the third year, we had 100 employees. It basically just exploded. And what that made me do was to basically acquire a factory in Portugal, because we were working with the factory, and after those couple of years or 3 years, we were up to 90% of production capacity at that factory. And the owner of the factory basically wanted to retire, so we took over the factory, or acquired the factory, and basically built the factory as you would want a factory to work if you are a clothing brand and you own your own factory. You know, it's a lot of transparency. It's deadlines that are being met, or even if they're not being met, then at least full transparency, honesty, complete insight in terms of what goes on, right? Because that is a tricky thing with productions normally, that you're not always 100% sure what actually really goes on. So we basically just wanted to make a concept where we, on one hand, runs the brand, run the brand, and on the other hand, run the production, and everyone feels like they're one big family, and it's okay to do mistakes. It's okay to, as long as you just basically let everyone know what's going on. So that was the idea. After, I don't know, a couple of years, well, not a couple of years, after 8 years doing that brand, I started opening the factory for other brands as well. So other brands, external brands, could start producing at the factory. And that made me learn a lot, I would say a lot more about fashion, because one thing is you start your own brand, it's great. And you kind of sometimes think the world evolves around your own brand. But once you start producing for other brands, you figure out that there's a lot more going on out there. There are different ways to build fashion brands. And I started to learn all those kind of, the great sides about the fashion industry, but also the less great sides. And starting to produce for around like 70 other brands than our own, kind of, I would say I saw all kinds of different brands, like the best high-end brands that you see on the runway. We did. I would see small designers coming up. We did those startups. We did, we've done all kinds of different brands. So about 5 years ago, I thought that I wanted to start a completely different brand. I wanted to start a brand, and that is Colorful Standard that I'm talking about here, which is basically a brand that changes the way that a fashion brand works and acts. For me, what is more interesting with the brand is that it's an idea, it's a concept, and it's definitely here a concept more than many other fashion brands are, because what we do is we sell something that doesn't really change and follows the fashion trends all the time. And I think that's just really a nice, for me, that was a really nice approach to kind of invent something, make it come alive, and not having to kind of, change it all the time. And basically, if we just touch a bit on the concept of Colorful Standard, and maybe even the name first, well, basically Colorful Standard means, or the name Colorful Standard comes from obviously two words. Colorful does not really refer to the fact that we have a lot of colors, even though we have 60 colors in the collection, but that's not really the point. The point is more that it's a positive word, it's open-minded, it's inclusive, it embraces diversity. So basically it also talks about, different kinds of people. I'm not talking religion here, because that's not really what interests me. People can have whatever religion they want. I'm just more talking here about different kinds of people, different views on
Variety of
the
users.
world. Yeah, exactly. Where you grew up doesn't matter. They're all the, basically just an open-minded, inclusive brand. So that's basically the positive, colorful approach to it. And standard basically just means that we want to raise the bar in the fashion industry. We want to raise the standard for how production, how supply chain is done, how, the element of transparency we have in the fashion industry. I've always wondered why people put on their website, like, check us out, see where we produce here, and then you end up with like, a random city name somewhere in China, and maybe one photoshopped image from a factory, and you have basically no idea where it is, right? There's no chance you're gonna find it. We basically wanted to do that different. So we have, for example, in our web shop packages, we have the locations for the factory. You can basically look up the factory, and you can go there, visit it any day. There is on the website just basically an open invitation for anyone to come check it out, see what goes on. Anyway, so that's kind of the name of Colorful Standard. I then wanted to basically kind of look at it from a number of different angles. I wanted to tick all boxes in terms of sustainability. So we obviously use sustainable materials like organic cotton or recycled merino wool. We produce everything locally or source everything locally in Portugal. We don't transport the things a lot. We use garment dye for basically almost all our products, or at least the jersey products. So what that means is that we produce everything in off-white, and then we color it basically by demand. So we never discarded the product, we never destroy the product, and we never basically go on sale because we don't have seasons, we don't follow trends that way.
Mm-hmm.
We basically just, produce a product, sell the product, and then adapt to demand and produce more.
Right.
We don't have that
Simple.
many styles.
Yeah.
We have a lot of colors.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to tick all boxes in terms of sustainability. So that's also recycled materials in terms of labels or packaging or bags and all these things.
Mm.
Then I wanted to kind of, because you also got to sell something, right? One thing is to do it, a nice product and then just cross your fingers that will sell. It doesn't really work, right? So you obviously got to look from a very business perspective, right?
Of course.
So I basically read a lot of books. Many of them I already read, but everything from, well, Jeff Bezos to Elon Musk to, all the classics,
Yeah.
but very business kind of books. And I simply just listed all the reasons why a wholesaler could say no to buying this brand. So that could be, price too high, margins too low. We as a brand would go too much on sale and would push prices down.
Yeah. No
in
seasons.
wholesale, everything. What do the store do if they buy purple and they can't sell purple, right? So we would do a system where we could swap the colors. I basically listed every single reason I could come up with for anyone to kind of say no to buying the brand.
Right. And created solutions for that.
Excuse me, sorry?
And created solutions for those objections.
Absolutely. Yeah. I basically try to eliminate, every single thing on the list. And then what it made me come down to was the only reason that I would kind of allow to be on there was that the store did not have more budget. Because having no more budget would make me just be able to sell to them in 6 months when the budget was open again, right? So that was kind of the idea. We did create a small rack, a sales rack is like a 1 meter long metal sales rack that has place for 20 hangers, and we would put those in the stores. So basically, the products would always look amazing. It would look like someone just merchandised it because it was like with fixed spacing for each of the hangers. And it would allow the store to basically fill up all the time and have a quite large sell-through per square meter, right? So basically kind of had this kind of small installation in the stores. Furthermore, that would require, or not require, but that would make us be able to put our branding in the stores, because basically we don't have any logo on the products at all. The idea with Colorful Standard is that
branding through merchandising.
There isn't anything on the product.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't any logo on the product, so we needed that sales rack for the visual merchandising, for the logo, for something to be recognized, right? And I wanted to do the brand very kind of, well, timeless is one thing, but just at least something that wouldn't really be something you would be tired of. Of course, it's more difficult to build a brand with no logo on it because you aren't really able to
differentiate yourself.
You don't get the same recognition online. If someone tags you in an image or anything, you can't really see it, right?
Right.
So that's a tricky one. But that's also why I'm so proud today that we actually build a brand without a logo on it, right?
Yeah.
So that was the kind of the concept. And then we went to market in 2018. We got into 50 stores there was 50 stores at first delivery, then 150, 300, 500, 800, and then more than 1,000 now. And then at the same time growing a very successful online business. Basically, that has been the idea from the start, because I'm not here necessarily to say that I'm only focused on direct to consumer, but I do think that a D2C part of a business is crucial. And I do
Of course.
think I don't want to say one is more important than the other. I would though say that if I could only choose one, I would go with direct to consumer. But what a wholesale part of a business can do is that it can actually brand build in a way faster at a way faster pace than you can do yourself online, right?
Of course. Yeah, because you're leveraging stores with established reputations. Yeah.
Exactly. So what exactly what you're saying there is that they at one point they would validate the concept, right? Because if it's out there, you know, if it's in a premium wholesaler,
It means
then
that it's,
obviously people would see it, right? People would understand. But what it also does is that it makes from a from a brand building perspective, you suddenly got like 1,000 Instagram accounts, right, working for you out there.
mhm.
And if you do it right, you're actually getting a profitable marketing channel running at the same time as your direct to consumer,
Yeah.
because your wholesale obviously should be a profitable channel. And if
Yeah.
it becomes a marketing tool, it's unbelievable, right? Because
Of course.
you've
Yeah.
seen all
That's
these.
the dream come true. Yeah.
Exactly.
Just making
So I
money in the
start.
market. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I studied all the big ones like Allbirds and Warby Parker and all of them, you know, and thought it was also very interesting that a lot of them basically came to market now in wholesale or with own retail. And I think that plays really well into the kind of the playbook that we made, which was, you know, let's get those wholesalers on board right away. Let them help as well. We, on the other hand, will then not, you know, uh, take advantage of that and, you know, lower our prices online or anything. We will keep our, you know, keep our word and keep prices high online. Um, and don't do Black Fridays, don't do sales, don't do anything like that at all. So
Mm.
they're also happy, right? Because it goes two ways.
Yeah.
Um, so that was one thing. That was basically that whole marketing tool that I think wholesale can do if you do it right and if you're selective, I think. And then from a from a direct to consumer perspective, like if you if you want to go deep into e-com numbers, right? The major challenge for a direct to consumer brand is always first purchase, right? How
Hmm.
much do you want to pay for that first customer, right? That
Yep.
initial contact or that at least initial purchase. Um, and I think it's very interesting what a wholesaler can do there, because if you think about it, right? What if you try to adapt the kind of model of saying, well, the first purchase isn't done online. The first purchase is done in wholesale
Mhm.
at a profitable
In a profitable
uh
way without you
profitable.
taking without any resources being invested on your end from a time perspective. Yeah, everything. The hardest part of the job, which is pushing the boulder forward, is done by the retailer. And your job as a direct to consumer brand is just to make sure that that momentum uh increases over long periods of time through customer relationship branding, improving on the brand, improving on the direct to consumer channels, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that is what we try to do from day one. So basically you would kind of like have this model of first purchase in store, uh, you know, second or third or whatever purchase online. And you would actually see that sometimes online as well, because you would see an odd amount of orders with like first purchase, 10 t-shirts, different colors, one size, no returns, right? You'd kind of think like, did this person really buy, you know, did they buy one t-shirt somewhere? You know, were
Yeah, of
they, you know, an Italian tourist that went to London, bought it in a
course.
department store, went
Yeah, it takes
home,
a
you
lot of
know?
trust for for people to make those orders, and trust is built over long periods of time. And if you cannot track that customer through advertising or previous orders, then yeah, it's just safe to assume that he probably just developed that relationship with retailers.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah. So that was the idea. Of course, any successful direct to consumer, you would kind of work with the retention. Um, you basically want to make everyone happy, right? And how
Mhm.
do you do that? Well, apart from great customer service, you know, at the end of the day, it also comes down to the quality of the product. And that's really what we try to do. So really try to work with an amazing quality the garments. And I can say that from producing for a lot of brands, and even the, you know, the highest end brands that you have out there, that our quality is outstanding, and it comes at a price that is very fair. I mean, some people actually tells us once in a while that the product is too cheap, right? It's difficult discussion price, because, you know, the world is as the world is, and there's a, you know, depending on where you're from, there's a different view on what cheap is.
Of course.
And but what we at least try to deliver is that we deliver a quality product at an extremely good, you know, price to quality ratio. And I think
Good
that
price per
that makes,
value.
absolutely. And I think that's why we work really well in premium retailers or wholesalers, because
Mm,
we are there at a high quality, but we're not with there any logo. So you can basically buy any product. You can buy a Balenciaga sweatshirt, right? And you can mix and match with our t-shirts, or, you know, whatever or shorts, or whatever you want to mix and match with.
of course.
And you don't got that logo interference. You don't got that price interference, but you basically got quality that matches, right?
Of course.
So that's kind of our, I would say, our kind of cornerstone of the success, right?
Of course. It's not competing on branding. It's not competing on price. If anything, the it's the perfect, and I don't know if this is the right analogy for it, but it's the perfect way for retailers to sell you more things when you're just about to finish your purchase. Just as when you're walking out of the grocery store, you see a bunch of products that might be a good end to your purchasing experience.
Exactly.
And that's what the brand has become for premium and luxury position retailers.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Wow. What a great position to be in. Wow.
So yeah. And yeah, to continue the story, what happened then was that I wanted to do a store, right? I wanted to do our own Colorful Standard flagship store. And I only wanted to do it in Paris or London, because I
Mm.
thought that that was kind of a, well, I didn't want to go too local. And just for those that don't know, I'm from Copenhagen in Denmark, and I thought that it would kind of be too easy to do it here in Copenhagen. So I basically wanted to do only in Paris or London. We went with Paris first, and then London came later. We now have 9 stores, and a couple of more is opening within the next 3 months.
Were the stores now still Europe and America
Yes.
predominantly?
Yeah. Only Europe. So we just opened one more in Paris. So we got 3 in Paris now. We have 2 in London. We got Zurich, Antwerp, 1 in Copenhagen, 1 in Berlin. We are gonna do Hamburg. We're gonna do Barcelona. 1 more in London. Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Wow. Okay, so just to sort of like summarize everything that we've spoken about so far, is you essentially started a brand, then you transition into production because the opportunity arose to buy a manufacturing plant in Portugal. And it would be very conveniently for you to be vertically integrated. And as you developed experience as a manufacturer, you sort of, after a long period of time, decided to start another brand, but this time with all the experience that you've accumulated, both as a previous successful fashion brand owner, but also as a successful manufacturer. And that transitioned into the business model that is the brand Colorful Standard, which is a very, very well positioned brand and just a very, very efficient business model overall. I mean, then he's in a lot of senses of the way, it's great from a pricing perspective because margins must be amazing. It's great from a quality perspective because you have complete understanding and control of the manufacturing process. It's great from a branding perspective because, again, you're leveraging brands that use 10 times the resources that you're using for your own brand. And I'm guessing at this point, it's just a matter of duplicating the process because your product is, as you said, it's not seasonal based. So it's not like you have to continuously be spending money on product development and research. It's just, we just have to continuously understand maybe branding and what is relevant today and what not to know what to be associated with. But in essence, our value proposition, our brand, and our business model doesn't have any reason to change now or in the future.
Absolutely. That is 100% correct, and 100% the goal we had. You know,
Wow.
I like things that are very simple. I
Very
I know it's
Scandinavian
not.
of you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, right? Because I yeah, we do have a lot of minimalistic furniture here, and but I actually didn't necessarily wanted to go that minimalistic in, you know, in either ads or photo shoots or things like that. And having 60 colors might not necessarily be so Scandinavian. I mean,
Mm,
Scandinavian brands usually stick to less colors, but there are definitely some very clean
principles.
aesthetics there.
Of
I
course.
think when we started, which is 5 years ago now, I I did see a lot of kind of sustainable brands coming out, and I felt like everyone was trying to kind of adapt the same look. I think, you know, when you know, if you think back and looking at all sustainable brands that came, they were all very brownish, you know, in terms of their packaging and labels and hang tags, and you know, it was like,
Interesting.
just because it's, you know, it's not that brown paper necessarily is way more sustainable than a white paper, right? It's like,
That's
you
true.
know, so I basically just said from day one, I'm not gonna do anything that I do not think is beautiful.
Mm,
And sometimes I think people mistake what I mean with beautiful, but when we talk about hang tags and labels, I think it's pretty obvious that it, you know, I didn't want to just do something that looked sustainable and then cross my fingers that people would buy into sustainability,
mm,
because I basically don't believe that sustainability is something you have to pay for. I basically believe that we should live in a world, and there's a bit of way to go still, but I would love us to live in a world where whatever you buy, you don't even have to look, right?
right.
You
It's
know, it's
there's
just
it's an
sustainable, right?
assumption. Yeah, of course.
You know, milk is organic
It's a
and
standard, as the
and-
name
e-
suggests.
exactly.
Yeah.
I I I wanted us to basically build something where people would be like, well, if I buy from these guys, you know, I know that it's okay. I know it's great. What happened then was that, you know, we got people out there saying, well, you didn't tell the story well enough, right? Because we're not over promoting anything.
Mm,
We sometimes are a little too humble in terms of what we actually do. Well, is that might be the downside, but right, but I like to kind of under promise and over deliver. So that's
mm.
basically what we've tried to do.
Interesting.
Uh, yeah.
Wow. Let's see. How do I follow? Because there's so many different things I want to ask you. I mean, I guess the first follow up question that I want to have after that first sort of like stage of the conversation is, I mean, everything's has. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, you don't strike me to be, or the way to say it properly is you've had success after success after success happen. I mean, relatively speaking, I'm sure there was a lot of like mistakes and issues along the way. But in general, if you look at your overall career, you have been very, very successful in every single venture that you've come across in. And on one side of the coin, I mean, I know you've lived a very interesting lifestyle. I mean, for a lot of times you were traveling around the world, seeing different things. I know you're into surfing, so you don't fit the stereotypical image of behavior of a guy that starts business and is very successful in one business and then goes ahead and goes very successful into another business. So, what do you think what do you think has when you take time to reflect what's made you successful over long periods over time against others? What do you think that has been what do you think the single most important reason has been for you? And
Hmm.
I wanted to give more context to the question so that people could understand the type of person that you are versus the type of person sometimes I interview that fits into a the successful mold versus this one.
That is a very good question. I would say it's the first time I had that question. You know, yeah, it's a very good question. I think, and well, this might sound like a cliche, right? But you gotta figure out why you're in business in the first place, right? Not I'm not talking about what you're actually doing, but I think there are different ways that people are in business, and there are some people that are in business to make a lot of money, and basically just look online to figure out where is the next thing,
Where's the next
where's the next
opportunity?
thing that someone can make money on, right? And
Yeah.
then I'm gonna do that. And then there are people that are very passionate about what they do. And I am just passionate about creating things. You know, I just like to come up with an idea and see and do what it takes for that idea to come into the real world.
Mm.
I don't know if that's because of surfing or because I basically just built my life around doing things that I love. I don't know, but at least that's something I took into to my career as well. So what it made me do was basically kind of identify things that I love to do. And there are similarities in all of the things that I have done. From the first brand to taking over the factory in Portugal to the new brand I'm doing now. I've always been very passionate about the things. And when you are passionate about things, well, first of all, you spend more hours because it becomes your hobby.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. You kind of maybe are even more focused. So it's kind of like your drug as well. It's like that is kind of this is what I want to wake up to do in the morning. You're sharper every day. You put more into it. You believe more in what you're doing. And in terms of, not that we should get into necessarily advice for people that starts up, but any business, but I really do believe that if you do work with passion and you focus on stuff that you like to do, it's more likely that you will succeed and that money will then be
a result
it will
of the
be an
process.
outcome, right? It will be a
Yeah.
positive outcome. And I really do believe that, because it does take a lot of hours to start anything, right? It really does. Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to say that entrepreneurs or starting businesses is a walk in the park. It's not at all, right?
Yeah.
But if you are passionate about it, it's fun on the way. You can work for your ages, or it's fun. So I think that's kind of I suddenly, after starting the first brand, I wanted to build that brand, and I fell in love with production. I wanted to understand production. I wanted to, it was a new thing. What's actually comes, before that product hangs in the store. I wanted to understand that. I was passionate about that. Right now, I'm passionate about changing the way that we buy clothes and the way that we consume. Basically, I basically want us to buy less but buy better. I want to make sustainability something that you know basically could be taken for granted, right? It's just there. It's supposed to be there, right? Like I would want everyone on the planet to have clean drinking water, right? I just want, and that's what I'm passionate about. So there's a pattern in, I would say, in the businesses that I've done.
Yeah, interesting. So passion has been the one consistent variable that you can attribute most of your successes to. Interesting. And when it comes to finding or developing that passion, is your passion a result of, because I get a sense that you lead life almost like an adventure. You have more of like an adventurer persona, more like an executive or an entrepreneur, traditional entrepreneur. So is that passion something that you find throughout life just by living authentically to something that you want to do, and that passion transition organically evolves and changes over periods of time? Or was it something that you needed to find first, actively look for, and then once you found it, the rest was a little bit easier because you had the foundations of what you were passionate about? So in order to summarize the question, was passion an organic result because through living authentically, or was the foundations of your passion something that you had to look for very strategically and consciously for a certain period of your life?
I think, well, I would assume it's a little of both, right? Meaning that for some people, passion is basically right in front of you, right? You know what your passion is. Other people don't really know what their passion is. But I think if we all spend, or anyone spend time on actually, sitting down, if you sit down in a dark room with closed eyes for 1 hour, I'm sure you're gonna figure out what matters to you, right? And that could be anything. It could be family, it can be creating things, it can be money, it It can be
Mm-hmm.
cars, it could be anything. But I'm sure that most people are likely to be able to find what they're passionate about. Of course, it's not always easy to make that into a business.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the main issue we have here is that I don't think it's hard for people to find their passion, but I think it's hard for people to kind of pursue or create a career around their passion. And I think that comes a bit down to kind of this of society and how we basically build,
Things,
you
how
know,
things
our
are structured.
educational system and, you know, the way that we basically interact with each other and expectations, right? Because, well, I'm not saying that all people here have the possibility to go to school. There are many people in the world that can't go to school. But if we kind of look at the kind of, let's just say most of Europe, right? People can go to school. But, you know, going to school, you're basically taught to work for other people, right? You are taught to kind of interact in an organization and what do you do, and you know, if you study this and you know, how do you make a CV and how do you apply for a job and all these kind of things. And that does conflict a lot with pursuing your passion, right? Unless you find a company that kind of, you know, is within the, you know, in the field of your passion, right? And that is a tricky thing. I also think that sometimes expectations from friends and families can be can be an issue for people that wants to start brands, because you got parents that have expectations for what you do. You got friends that might not be entrepreneurs and don't understand that you want to risk everything to do this or that, right? So, you know, in terms of, again, advice for people that start up, it is really like, you know, sometimes go with your gut feeling. Maybe sometimes try to do it as early as possible in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I am a big fan of education, though, because education can actually also give you that, you know, comfort and
Belief systems and
belief. Yeah, I believe it can give you kind of ways to break down problems and understand things and how to you know, find knowledge and to a lot of things. Definitely, I'm a big fan of education. I've gone to well, almost too many schools and universities and stuff. But I do think that it's important, if you want to start something, that you really believe in yourself, that you surround yourself with people that respect you for the passion you have and the journey that you are on, and it will support you in that and will inspire you.
of
And sometimes you also, you know, you gotta have a gut feeling, you gotta believe in yourself.
course.
Um, I think that's hard sometimes, but what I do and I have done basically, I can't remember since how long, but I spend a lot of energy visualizing my goals. So I basically, some of them are very changeable, some of them are a little less, but I basically start every morning meditating, and I I I basically say different things to myself while I meditate, and then I visualize something happening. If I have a specific goal that I want to, you know, let's say I want to close a business deal with someone, or, you know, I want to, whatever it could be, you know, I visualize that happening. I visualize myself entering a room or looking at the paper and taking a pen and leaning over and in the, you know, the table and signing the contract or whatever, right? Could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more you do that, uh, the more you do that, the more you end up believing in yourself and
Mm-hmm.
in the project. And I think that sometimes helps you, you know, follow passion in a more structured way that can become a business then.
Of course. Yeah. So the easiest way to come across passion, well, the question is not how can you find something that you're passionate about, because passion tends to be found through reflection, isolated reflection. It's more a matter of putting yourself in an environment that supports your belief in that passion.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. I know there's a financial issue here as well, you know, and
Of course,
I
a
am
model or a systems problem. Yeah, yeah. That was actually going to be my next question, because I would think that those are the foundations, right? But just as you said, if you had to pick wholesale versus direct to consumer, how would you handle that dynamic between what you're passionate about and, you know, business and financial reality? What is more important? What goes first? What goes seconds? Or how's the overall dynamic of that?
Yeah, good, very good question, because, you know, depends, does one have to rule out the other? Good question. It depends on how you set up your business, and obviously the journey that the business is on, because there are different things you do at different stages in the business, right?
Mm.
In the beginning of a business, you have to do everything, right? It's everything from customer service to setting up the ads online to, you know, taking your bike or car or whatever, you know, to the local wholesaler and trying to convince them to buy something, right? In the beginning, I did not look at all at what was more important. I basically only focused on momentum.
What had to
I
be
want to
done?
get my
Yeah.
product out there,
Mm.
and whatever comes first makes the most sense. Well, if the universe decided that I'm gonna have to be in 100 stores before I've sold a single t-shirt online, then that's how it is. If the
Yeah.
opposite is gonna happen, that's how it is. But what I will do though is I will set up every single channel, every single possibility. I will make things ready for it to happen. So I'm not gonna be caught off guard and saying, well, there could have been a lot of online orders, but I wasn't ready. Or there could have
Mm.
been some stores that wanted to buy, but I wasn't ready. So I usually try to be ahead of the game and kind of say, I'm ready, but I'm also very flexible. Let's see what happens here, right?
Mm.
Um, I had a podcast the other day with a very successful entrepreneur in fashion, actually, that said he didn't like to plan. And I also don't like to plan. It's just like, I understand when people say I don't like to plan too much, because it changes, you know, the flexibility, and it sometimes it changes the way that how agile the company can be.
Mhm.
But I also understand that when you grow, at a point you want to hire a CFO maybe, or a CEO at one point, because I will also be 100% honest and say, you know, the more passion driven you are, the more passion you start out chasing, the more likely it is that you are not the right CEO of your own company at
I've
a
heard that
specific
multiple
point,
times.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the less business, the more likely someone else can do business better than you, right?
Mm.
So
Wow. And would you say that passion is also the foundations of a differentiated business model? Because I understand I think one of the biggest challenges people have when it comes to starting brands is that exact balance. Because sometimes people are too focused on the opportunity and how to build business models around specific opportunities. And sometimes people are too focused on the creative vision. And it's a balance between those things that can actually have something that is very unique from a vision perspective, but also something that is a great business that reinforces a vision, that reinforces a business, et cetera, et cetera.
mhm.
But since business needs to start somewhere, just as life and everything starts somewhere, would you say that everything really comes down to that passion? Because that passion will then translate into a product value proposition, which will then transition to a business model. Do you think that's where everything truly starts, or do you think it really depends on the individual and what are their strengths and their weaknesses?
Well, sure, you know, we are all different, and I'm actually in business to make a brand basically called Call for Standard that is, you know, open-minded and try to embrace differences. So there are
Mm.
obviously very different ways to the goal, or the, you know, the end goal, if there is, even if it is an end goal. But
In your
I
personal
think, yes,
situation, yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely right that there are different people that would approach things differently. And I'm a big fan of doing business. I mean, I think unless you consider that there has to be a business side of it, it doesn't really matter how much good you want to do in the world, because if there's no business, you can't do much good anyway, right?
Right.
So you have to make money to change things, right? You have to make money to have a voice, or to have uh, the power to kind of go your own direction. So you got to make money on the way, sure. But I do feel that sometimes passion can help you, or at least knowing what you came from, and, you know, being true to the identity of the brand, and what made you start in the first place, will help you make decisions sometimes. Because let's take COVID, for example. You'd see a lot of brands during COVID change course completely. You know, we had brands that were not represented online. We had brands that didn't have the products that they thought they wanted to sell or could sell during COVID. So we had a lot of brands changing their assortments or their branding or their strategy or whatever during COVID. And then when COVID disappears, what are they left with, right? Because they're not close to their DNA anymore. They kind of made themselves into products. You know, you could have an established brand that suddenly started selling products, and what you would do is that you would kind of make the brand into a product, you know, which kind of means that you're stepping backwards.
Yeah, you're commoditizing your brand.
Exactly, right. So you're and especially now with, you know, with the new generations and everyone, you know, being fans of transparency and authenticity, you know, you gotta stay true to what you do. So, for example, during COVID, we didn't change anything. I didn't change a single production order. I didn't change anything at all. I didn't change the way you market. I didn't change the product assortment. I didn't change anything at all. And if we had products that sold very well during COVID, sure, I tried to order a little more, but not on, you know, on the compromise or compromising any other products in production at all. I basically just stick with what we were doing, and thought, well, COVID is going to disappear, and I want to be known for the product assortment and the colors and the strategy and the identity and the images and the vision of the brand that we set out to do. I'm not here to make any short-term decision just to make an extra buck right now because it's easy to sell something online or it's easy to do this or that during COVID. So if you constantly have passion to, or mission, or, you know, mission statement to kind of look at, say, we are in business to do this, it will make you do long-term decisions rather than short-term decisions. And what I see sometimes out there is a lot of brands being made by people that spend a little too much time in business school, and they kind of think that they figured it all out. You know, they're also the ones that constantly talk about the algorithm on Meta, right? You know, it's everything about the algorithm. It's everything about the algorithm.
Yeah,
No, it's
now it's
not
the
about the
algorithm.
algorithm,
Before it used to be the financial statements. Before they used to
right?
do financial accounting, there was a financial accounting the circles. Now it's all about the algorithm circles. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's always the algorithm's fault. But the only thing that is interesting to know about the algorithm is that the algorithm basically pushes great content to people that would like to see great content, right? So if there is someone out there that really loves your content and you do great content and creatives, you know, and you build a brand and your brand is interesting for people, the algorithm is going to push it, right? As simple as that. And I think there's a lot of people out there that kind of approaches fashion and other businesses from a business perspective, and I just think that that makes them take short-term decisions, you know. And I'm in business to basically have long-term decisions, you know.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
a way that I always try to push this concept forward is not necessarily business, because business has a very unreliable idea of its true essence and its true meaning. It's more a balance between creativity and passion and calculated rationality or opportunistic rationality, I think. And that's sort of like the dominating principles, I think, in both disciplines. And the role of a founder is to, I think, identify which one out of those two are his personal strengths, create value propositions based on those, and create evolving business models through the dynamic of those two relationships, and then introducing different and better variables like people, et cetera, et cetera. But that's essentially it.
Yeah. I mean, I can hear you. Of course, you talk to many people, and but you know what you're talking about. I can hear that.
Well, I've been an entrepreneur myself, not for as long as you. I've been doing this for 10 years. And I think my business advantage, my biggest advantage is that I can communicate it very well. So it sounds like I know, it sounds like I know more than I actually do. But yeah, interesting. And now that you have a very I guess, succinct understanding on the process, because where you're early on in your career, you're very reactive. You don't really have any understanding on the process, just as you don't understand a language when you're very young. But now that you can truly look at everything and how it works, if you had to start over and you understand the most important, probably the most important asset in this entire scheme, which is other people, right? And understanding how those other people can be brought together into your own vision. If you had to start all over again, do you think, would you start leveraging people earlier on, or do you think every single founder has to sort of like do a lot of different things to understand the position that he is supposed to play on the larger scheme of the vision or the business?
Interesting. I think that is actually interesting because I am a huge fan of professionalizing companies. I'm a huge fan of getting a CFO. I mean, I'm mentioning the CFO because many entrepreneurs are not CFOs, especially not if they're passion driven, right, or creative people. So I'm a huge fan of that. But one thing I can really see that has helped me a lot in this, in any venture I've been in, basically, is the fact that I can see that people respect me for knowing what they do, because I have done customer service. I am the one that have cleaned the toilets in the office the most times, for sure. I have done it all. I basically, spent the most hours here, done the most different kind of tasks in any business that I've done. Maybe apart from actually the seamstresses at the factory, I'm not I'm not as skilled to kind of put together a garment, but any other, I would say, part of running a business I've done, and I think that helps me a lot when I talk to any of the employees here, because they know that I've done it. They might be way better than I am at it, but I know what they're talking about, and that, I think, to kind of answer your question, basically, yes, I would suggest that an entrepreneur starts with every single aspect, doing every single aspect of the company. Well, I sometimes see people starting a business and the first thing they focus on is trying to get an investor. I don't think that's the way to do it, to be honest. First of all, you're probably going to it's very likely you will sell a big part of your company too cheap, because who's going to pay a lot for something that just started? But what it also will make you do is it will make you not understand the value of money if you get too much of them early in the process. I am a big fan of people starting out with little, trying to make it all work out somehow, we are all gonna make mistakes, but the less money you have when you start, the
The
less
less mistakes,
mistakes
the better.
yeah, you're likely to make less mistakes if you consider all the everything you spend money on. And I really think that customer service is a big thing that I would spend energy on in any startup. You have to understand your customers, right? You have to understand what they're actually asking for. And sometimes they're not asking for what you think they're asking for. Sometimes they also just want to be heard or understood. I would say it's a game changer if you know everything. I would not say that people should just get money and then, you know, start spending
Yeah,
them.
figure out
Start
through
hiring.
execution and failure.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. And what is so develop a general understanding of the skill sets that are required to, have a good business model or a functioning vision. It's more, I think it's essentially more a matter of timing more than it is if you should do it or not. It's people should learn a little bit about everything, but should really pay attention to when the time is right for you to stop doing it. And I think that's what entrepreneurs get wrong, is not necessarily that they don't understand or do everything, but they just don't understand the timing on when to actually start doing. Because I suffer with that myself. I've done things for so long. You start your own perception of how it should work changes because you've been doing things for so long. You start developing false senses of identity, false senses of confidence. And that affects again, not necessarily your ability to understand there's people better than you, but that the timing it's sometimes even more important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think entrepreneurs are are often their own worst enemies, right? Because many entrepreneurs, including myself, sometimes believes that we can do the things better, right? And it might not be better, but it just matches maybe more what is in our heads. And that isn't gonna work, right? You have to let go of a lot of it, because otherwise you're gonna be a one-man army. You basically have to let go and kind of, let other people do it. And then, well, yeah, it might not be 100% as you wanted it to be, but it might actually be better. And actually, even more important, someone else did it and you didn't have to spend your time on it. So this whole thing of kind of buying back your time or transitioning into a role as a founder where you would basically only create or only work with value creating things is definitely the way to go. And I think many entrepreneurs don't really get out of the entrepreneurial phase. I still believe that any company should keep the startup spirit, and I think that is doable. You can do that, even if you hire a CFO, or even if you hire whatever, even a CEO, and you're not the CEO anymore. But as long as you kind of keep remembering what you started out believing in, and what was the fundamentals of the business, and keep doing those kind of things, I think you can actually really keep, you can keep a startup vibe in your company, and you need to ensure that you have the time to work on those kind of tasks instead of all the administrational things, right?
Interesting. And was there anything that helped you along the process of making those decisions? Because, of course, long-term decisions are the best decisions to make for visionaries, but visionaries are stuck early on in this position where cash flow is so short, right? They need to survive, they need to eat, that they need to compromise long decision making versus short decision making. And it's part of the entrepreneurial process, of course, going through that thing and just sort of like figuring thing out until you essentially get lucky in one or another way. And you go through it and that part of the process. But for you at this stage, when starting specifically Colorful Standard, because I'm guessing this was sort of like what happened very early on in your career, but very recently, now that you were going to start a brand from scratch, understanding the dynamic, and without actually being a very big proposal of financial investment, how did you, what cash flow position, or what was your financial philosophy for you to make those decisions? Were you making enough cash flow from different businesses to sort of like have a good foundation to make those good long-term decisions? Did you have investments for very early on, or you just went through the entire process all over again?
Yeah, good question. Good question. I don't like to spend more money than we make, basically. I mean, period. I am not a fan of burning money. I understand tech companies sometimes have to go that way, but in general, I like to when I start over, I like to start over, kind of. I understand that is easy to say when I own a factory in Portugal, and I know who to call to start a t-shirt production or a sweatshirt production. I understand that can sound very easy.
Yeah, but that's been what, 25 years of experience later? Of course, experience is going to make things easier.
Exactly. So, but what it wasn't like we started Colorful Standard we didn't have any investments. We didn't have a big loan. We actually didn't have any finance at all to start Colorful Standard. We basically just started slow. It basically just started slow. You gotta work with suppliers to get, good payment terms. You gotta convince them to make small orders in the beginning. You really gotta get out there and try to sell your products. So we basically I would say we did it from scratch to the same extent that I did the first brand. Of course, knowing that we had a lot more experience inside the company, and I had people already working that I could, that could do different kind of things. But when I started Colorful Standard, we were actually only 2 people at the office, because I've transitioned the whole business into like only production for other brands. So when we did start Colorful Standard, there wasn't 20 employees or anything, We basically started over and said, let's make a brand, let's build this, let's become a client at the factory like any other client. We also don't have any special prices at the factory. Basically, when the factory quotes a price for Colorful Standard, it's equal to any other brand that it produces for. So I try to keep the companies separate, because otherwise I wouldn't know if Colorful Standard was actually a real profitable, successful business. But that's also what I like, right? I like the challenge of starting from scratch, basically, right? Idea,
course.
concept,
Of course. But I mean, you have developed the confidence that's required to repeatedly go through the process successfully. And when you analyze what makes up that confidence for you, how long did it take you to get there, essentially, to get to a point where you're like, okay, I think I understand myself and I understand how I play my part in the whole entrepreneurial process within fashion. How long did it getting to that point take you, and what do you think were the most important skills or experiences that you acquired in order to get to that position?
that I think it's a very, very, very good question. And I think it's a, well, basically it's a matter of how much do you believe in yourself, right? And how willing are you to risk something and start any venture, right? I think that's what many entrepreneurs struggle with, is like, how confident are they in their idea and what they want to do, you know? Because yeah, there has been a lot of times where I've doubted, or not a lot of times, but there's been some major, you know, times where I really doubted myself. When I started the first clothing brand, it was extremely successful. I didn't know much. I thought that this was how you do business. We had a ton of money in the bank
Yeah.
account. We made a
Sometimes
lot
that
of
could be
money.
worse long term
You know,
than short term. Yeah.
exactly. It's like we had no idea. It just went. It was almost too good to be true. At a point, you know, it started going down, and we sold less and less. I then, like I said, I then started to produce for other brands at the factory. But I kind of was in a period where the first brand I started was going down. We were losing traction, and therefore we also had less and less orders to place at the factory. I had started producing for other brands, but that wasn't up to speed yet. So I was basically in a period, in a couple of years, I was in a period where I couldn't provide enough orders to the factory myself, and I didn't have enough orders from external companies to produce. And I was starting to doubt how, what do I do? Because do I get more customers, external customers to the factory, other brands that can produce, or do I start another brand? But how do I start another brand if the brand that I already have is going down? Does that mean I don't know how to do brands in the time we are now? Have I lost it? You know, I was trying to figure out what was the formula for the first brand that I did, and I tried to replicate it. Didn't really work because I did start a brand that kind of like didn't work. And I think that was maybe because I was more passionate about making it work than I was actually passionate about the project in itself. I had to come up with an idea that would give me orders at the factory, and I couldn't. I was searching, I couldn't find any. I tried. So we were running for a couple of years, barely at break even at the factory. Yeah. Then the factory started going better and better. I focused for some years because we had more and more clients coming from outside, right? External clients. And then I think I gained a little more confidence in myself. I was like, okay, I had the first successful clothing brand. The factory is the second successful business. All right. Now I feel confident that I can do it again, actually. And I looked at all the things that I've done and tried to figure out, what worked and what didn't work. And that is when I then did the third one, which is called the standard.
Interesting. And if you, and I'm sure that it's a very general answer to respond to, but if you had to dilute the principles that you now follow religiously when you're making those new business vision decisions, what are they? So essentially, what did you learn from those experiences of what didn't work and what worked and why? And what principles have you developed in order to make those decisions as high probable as possible?
Yeah. I would like to say that from all the experience I have, that I can make a playbook and then everyone could basically just start a brand following that playbook. I mean, I would love to be able to say that. Unfortunately, it's not that easy.
Course. Yeah, I'm
But
not saying about, you know, the specific steps, because the specifics, I mean, it's such a
yeah,
complicated process that you can't really say step. People want to listen to the steps, of course,
yeah,
but there are no steps. I'm more in the sense of, you know, the foundational principles for you to approach new problems now and in the future. Passion is a great example, right? Passion as a dominating principle.
exactly.
Secondly, could be having a good educational process, right? So understanding that if I'm diving into an industry and there's variables that I don't understand, I need to understand them to a certain degree, or maybe delegating or being better with people. What are those foundational principles that over your failures and successes you've developed now that now translate into you
Yeah.
having a specific level of confidence?
Absolutely. And what I actually wanted to say with that in terms of me not having a playbook was, you know, it kind of taps into what you're saying there in terms of there are definitely some things that you can do and that you can focus on, but you have to be, of course, aware that that will change and it will be different for every single person. But I do think that yes, I would say for any new entrepreneur, or if I should give any advice, I would say yes, identify why you're in business first. You know, that's kind of the key thing, because what is crucial here is that you believe in yourself and that you can convince other people that what you are doing and what you're on, what the journey you're on is something that they should buy into, right? If you can't convince yourself, and then you obviously cannot convince anyone else. So try to figure out why you're in business. Really believe that you can do that. Visualize it every morning, meditate, whatever. Really believe in yourself. Then I would say, of course, if you can have the money to hire a couple, one or other person or two other people, really try to focus on finding people that also believe in that kind of journey. I think that will be a lot, it will be a lot easier at the office, or, you know, if you work from home or whatever, like to be aligned on the same, you know, later on you can find people that are not there, that are there for other reasons, right? But in the
Right.
beginning, surround yourself with only people that believe in it and believe in you, and not just the money. And I really believe that you should basically, you know, it's a funny thing, this one, but like hire slow, fire fast, right? I know when you grow, you sometimes you can hire slow, but at least, you know, fire fast if you have to, right? But try to avoid that, of course, but try to stick to only hanging out with people that believe in you, the one that wants the best for you, and that motivates you. Kind of like if you aren't inspired by people around you, in your family, your friends, whatever, right? Well, you gotta YouTube, or you gotta do something, right? It's for people that inspires you. But then I would say research. I would say research a lot. Don't compare. Don't compare what you're doing with everyone else, because they also started. But research, try to figure out where there's kind of a, you know, gap in the market. There's never a gap in the market, right? But it's the same as when people say, well, you can't do any new music because all music is done. Everything has been done once, right? There are no more Michael Jacksons, and there are no more right, Tina Turner's, right? But there are always someone new coming, right? There's a Beyonce, there are Taylor Swift, there are, you know, there's constantly new people coming. Same with brands. There might not be any gaps out there, but you just gotta believe enough in what you want to do that you can convince the world. So that's kind of, I would say, that's absolutely most important. And then research and learn, and then you gotta work a lot of hours. I mean, I don't think I think the goal is to work less. Sure, the goal is to outsource. The goal is to buy back your time, have time with family, or have time to, you know, sit on a beach and, you know, and just get good ideas, because that's where you will get the good ideas. But you gotta work. You have to risk. You have to take risk, and you have to work a lot in the beginning. And then I really think that making products that you like yourself, you know, make a product that will change your own life, because if it changes your own life, you're more likely to find people where the product will also change their life. And I think even now, you know, with the whole thing, you know, with, you know, anything from AI or the way that, you know, the whole new meta system is working, and you basically, you know, have to do less and less. One thing that is hard right now to not be working with is the community part of it, right? You got a community built. You got to find like-minded people. And I think this one, you know, when people say we do products like this for people like us, I think that kind of makes great sense, right? You want to believe in what you do, and you want to find like-minded people, you know? I think that's why those kind of business cases where people find a gap in the market, don't know anything about it, and then just do it without knowing anything about it, right? That's likely to fail because it's not authentic, right? You're not going to build a community. You know, how would I build a bicycling, you know, brand or a triathlon brand if I'm not doing any of the two sports, right? Because people would know, you know, no, whatever social content that I would share, or me content on social media I would share, people would see that it isn't me, right? You know, and they would figure it out. So I think people should basically just not complicate things too much sometimes, and basically just do what they're good at, right? You know, do what they love, and then learn. You know,
Yeah.
don't call up your best friend and say, "Can you come over here and draw my logo in Illustrator?" You know, sit down and learn Illustrator, right? Sit down and learn Photoshop. Is that what it takes? You know,
Yeah.
don't call some agency up and to ask them to put your first meta ad, right? You
Mm.
know, figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's especially relevant to passion-driven entrepreneurs. It's almost like the gap, and there's no such thing as a gap in the market for creatively or for passion-driven entrepreneurs. It's more a sense of there's a gap within you that needs to be filled up. And the gap in the market will automatically come up if you understand yourself and understand what gap you want to be fulfilled. And then the
Absolutely.
rest is what you said, is understanding how to leverage people, how to hire right, having an educational process, being curious, all those other principles. But it really all comes down to understanding and really believing what you're working on.
Absolutely. And
Interesting.
sure, if you want to call people up, then yeah, call people up that's done it before, or call them up to help you with your margins or your prices, you know, your financials, your accountings. There are many things, yeah, sure, that you should call up people for if you don't know yourself. I'm not saying that you should learn how to do accountings, right? But
Right. But just as a just take accountability. It's more a sense of take accountability. This, if you realize what the gap is, and then you realize that there's specific skills that you don't have that are required to fill that gap, and you don't have access to leverage or to other people that might solve them for you, then just do it yourself. Because I think that's essentially what I think. And this is very, very misunderstood nowadays, where, you know, hustle culture is sort of like glorified, and they automatically make this assumption that yes, you need to make work a lot, yes, but the ideal situation is, at least from a good business, is a business, or a good life is a life that allows you to have the largest amount of the result that you want for the least amount of effort. And the only way you can create that is through leverage. And leverage in business comes from capital. It comes from other people mostly. And you need to work a lot of hours, because if you don't work a lot of hours, you will not gain the skill set and experience that is required to understand how to manipulate leverage. And that's it. People think that it's, oh, if I work a lot, I'm going to succeed. No, the time is the money that you need to pay out for the skills that are required for you to get to the next stage, which is leverage. But I think that's also important to clarify, especially for passion-driven entrepreneurs that, you know, tend to look at business content online that is curated for people that are a little bit more rational, opportunistic, not necessarily passion-driven, which is fine. Again, different types of entrepreneurs. But I really like your formula, because it really speaks to this specific part of the audience. And because it is fashion and it is the fashion industry, the probability of you being a passion-driven entrepreneur is a lot higher than if you're a financier, you know, or an accountant, or in tech or something like that.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on with what you're saying there. And it really taps into my belief that you have to study, you have to acquire a huge amount of knowledge and then be able to figure out a way to apply that so you can build that skill set. It's, that skill set is then what's gonna make you kind of make things happen. Like, you gotta apply that skill set to something. And I think what many people fail, doing is that they kind of sometimes take the shortcuts. Suddenly they either search for a promotion or they take that job somewhere that pays a little more, and they work they're there in that job because of the money, but they don't learn anything, and then suddenly the job is gone, they're fired or they have to whatever, right? And they're left with less knowledge. And if you have no knowledge, you cannot apply it to new skills, and then you're gonna end up in trouble. So I really do believe that you gotta keep learning. You gotta keep, acquiring more and more knowledge, because that's what you're gonna apply to get that passion out there.
Yeah, how can I put this? The always changing nature of passion requires the always changing nature of your curiosity.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it, because you have to be curious. If you're not curious, it's gonna be very hard for you to learn anything, right? You will not remember. You know, you got you gotta be curious about what goes on out there. You gotta be, wanting to spend the time to read a book or listen to a podcast or, understand other people. And then I really, when we are talking about knowledge, because knowledge is there's knowledge that you can that will become or you can apply to something and it becomes your skill set, kind of, right? That is definitely one thing. But I think also knowledge in terms of your customers, like basically spending a lot of energy understanding your customers. It might not become a skill set, or it might become a skill set in terms of you can, I don't know, communicate better with them.
It's more of a habit than a skill set.
Yeah, you really gotta understand your customers. And I think that what happens very often when companies grow is that sometimes they forget, the startup vibe. Sometimes they forget the customers. Sometimes they think that they can put everything in a box. Sometimes they can, replicate things and then duplicate things. It's just not that simple always, right?
Yeah, they forget that at the end of the day, it's not about keeping your investors happy. It's about the customer. And big brands forget that. Yeah, of course. Different challenges for different stages, for different sizes.
Absolutely.
It's a difficult process. People don't really understand how difficult it is,
Yes.
But that's part of what makes it exciting. Life is difficult also, everything in life that's worth it at least has a certain degree of difficulty attached to it. But amazing. Just to wrap up the conversation too, because I can have these conversations for hours. Let's see.
Yeah.
I guess the one question that I would like to ask to conclude the episode is, after everything that we've spoken about, I'm guessing there's still one thing that you wish you either told yourself before and you listened to and you applied before, or that you apply today in a better way. And in essence, I want to ask you, what is the biggest piece of advice you'd give your past self in order to solve your current biggest weakness?
I think it's a mix of community understanding or customer. You would want the borders between customer and community to not really exist, right? The community should be the employees in the office. You're a part of the community yourself. The community should be the end consumer, whether that is a wholesale or a direct to consumer. It should be the store personnel in a store, whether that is a wholesaler or your own retailer. I think if looking back, I would have loved to work more with understanding and embracing everyone, that actually every single kind of touch point or person at a touch point of the company. And be more engaged with them. I think I have spent maybe too many hours in front of the computer myself, in an office. And then that might be really great if you're gonna build a PayPal or something, and you want to sleep under your desk and then program all day long. But if you are in fashion, if you are in any brand or any, if you are basically selling emotions or feelings, I think I would have liked to understand earlier on that what people remember is the feeling that they're left with. And that can be a trip to the cinema and a restaurant, unwrapping a gift, Christmas present, or it could be anything, opening a box from your web shop order, right? um I think I would have liked to kind of work more with the kind of community part of the business earlier on.
Hmm,
Sure, it's something everyone talks more and more about, of course, so it's a natural thing that everyone, but it's yeah,
amazing.
everything, yeah.
That's an amazing piece of advice. Yeah. I've made that mistake way more than I wanted to as well. And that essentially narrows down to people think that entrepreneurship is about staying in your house or staying in your office, but life and real business is happening outside in the world. And you need to go
Yeah,
out there and live it and explore it and figure it out.
exactly. And it's, you have people that would say, yeah, but why do I need to go why do I need to go anywhere? It's like, I have access to everything here. And it's not that I underestimate the, interaction online. That's not what I'm talking about here, because a lot of it is also online. I'm
Of
just
course.
saying that whatever channel, whether it's face to face or through email, or I think just basically more interaction, I would have loved to work with more with earlier. We worked very little with that in our first brand, actually.
Of course.
um
It's a very
and I
long-term
don't
decision. So it's difficult to
Yeah,
make those decisions early on. You just don't know any
exactly.
better. You're just focusing on the next transaction
Yeah,
that's gonna cover costs, you know? Um,
exactly.
wow.
I think so. So if you want to kind of like, if you want to make it very tangible or very like business, I would say focus less on short term, more on long term, because that is what community building is, right? Or
Yep.
relationship building. It is
Yep.
long term, where these other ones are more, like you just said yourself, it's more transactional based
Right.
business. And yeah, sure, there has to be transactions, but you basically want to have it based
Transactions
on
need to evolve
intention.
into relationships.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that is something we're doing a lot now, but I would have loved to apply that earlier I
Wow.
think we did it. I think we did it early on, sometimes at the factory, which, looking back at it, surprises me a little that we were so kind of black and white on that. Was that we basically made a rule internally at the factory saying we do not work with people we do not like, and it
That's a
doesn't
great
matter
rule.
how much money they bring.
That's a great
So
rule for life.
exactly, it's like the CEO at the factory in Portugal. Um, a great guy that I've known, basically for, I don't know, 15 years now. He's he he started in the beginning. He started to complain like, do we need this client? We just sat down, had a beer, and said, well, this is supposed to be fun, right? Let's not work with people we don't like. And we basically just let huge clients go. And I think that kind of made us, of course, we were in a fortunate position that kind of to make that happen. But we don't know how it would have went if we had taken those clients and kept with those clients. Maybe we would not have had a loyal relationship with them, and then they would have left us somehow, and we would have lost more money, right?
Yep.
So it's tricky. You don't ever know, but at least it's been more fun.
It's been more fun than difficult. That's that's always
Mm.
what it's all every time I sit down with a successful entrepreneur, that's essentially always the concluding answer is everything is difficult. sometimes you go through long periods where you think everything is difficult, but when you look at it over long periods of time, everything was a little bit more fun than it was difficult. And that's why I've been successful.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's so funny.
absolutely.
Yeah, wow.
That's true. Yeah.
Amazing, Till. Well, that will unfortunately that will conclude the episode. Hopefully, we could continue our conversation sometime. Again, these conversations are long overdue. I think people need to start listening to them a lot more often than they should. And yeah, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and actually doing this. It means a lot.
Been a huge pleasure. Actually, we never spoke before, but time just went past really fast. So
It went past very
it's been
fast.
amazing. Yeah.
That's what happens with good conversations. I think
Yeah.
people need more of this overall. But yeah, let's leave it at that because again, I tend to talk a lot. And yeah, I appreciate it too. Awesome. That was it. That was the awkward ending so far. So it wasn't too bad. And yeah, just to make sure that you don't rush because we went over the 90-minute
Don't
period.
worry. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure we had some time to create the shorts. Before we create the shorts, what do you think? What are your thoughts overall? Any ending notes? Anything that you'd like to discuss now that the conversation is still fresh in our heads?
No, I think it was very good. I think you make it easy. You make it flow really well. I think the start, I don't know, but you'll figure out that when you do the editing. But maybe the start didn't come off as interesting as it could have been. But yeah, I think it was really good.
Okay, great. I mean, I'll send the raw audio file as soon as it's done rendering over to the throughout today, just to make sure that if you want to check it or send it internally for people to verify, we can actually get to do that. A quick warning is everybody fucking hates how they sound. There's no cure to this.
No.
I've been doing this for 4 years. I still cannot stand listening to myself. I always think I sound dumber than I usually do, slower, you name it. So I'll send it just so that you can see it, but keep that in mind. You're just not gonna like it as much as other people will. That's just the reality.
But that's fine. I would say you know I don't think I said anything that I either regretted or don't want you to put. So
Okay.
so basically,
Great.
you can just go ahead and yeah.
Do whatever. Awesome. And yeah, and just to sort of like end things out, is there anything I always ask this to my guests, is there any introduction